The last thing that I do in hopes of becoming resilient is to envision the outcome. What is it that I want it to look like, or what would success look like to me? And the last thing that I do is I always rally my resources and I ask for help whenever I need it, but I also always am continuously asking for feedback. How could I have done this better?
Welcome to another episode of the Happy Friday Committee Mindset. Today we have a special guest, Miss Yulander Honeycutt, who is a facilitator, a workshop organizer. She just does so many things. And I asked her on here today to get her perspective on the Happy Friday Committee Mindset, which is being fearless, resilient, intuitive, determined, appreciative, and youthful. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Jason. Thank you so much for asking. How about yourself?
I am excellent. I am excellent. I am excellent. I just wanted to hop right into the principles and get your perspective. So,
Yeah.
just starting with the word fearless, what does fearless mean to you?
Jason, I'm so glad that you asked that. We're presented with opportunities in all ways to show fearlessness. I actually had an opportunity recently, probably within the past 10 days, whenever I was approached by someone in HR. And we always know that HR can be a little bit intimidating, but we had a roster of folks that had signed up for the leadership workshop. Of course, there was a deadline assigned to that as far as catering, lodging, flight, all of that information. So the person asked me if I could include the person in the training. And I told her, I said no, because it wasn't a matter of just pulling up a chair. It was other logistics involved. And I did not want to have that ripple effect go down to different teams and different departments. And I certainly didn't want it to be where we weren't doing things correctly. The person that she asked me to include wasn't even on the list. So he would have actually bypassed about 7 or 8 folks who were currently waitlisted for that class. Any other time I would have tried to make it work, but this time I kind of stood firm with what was right. It's always right to do what's right. And whenever I think about it, she was like, well, it's just another person. But if you've ever stood at the edge of any water and you threw a stone or a rock in there, the ripples just go outward. So it was more than just me that would have been impacted. It could have been our events team. It could have been, the caterers, the hotel lodging. It was just so many things. But this was one time that I stood firm, because there's no use in having a rule and you're not consistent with it, because it will lose its effectiveness. So that was one time that I really stood fearless in the face of maybe potentially an intimidating entity, but I know it was the right thing to do.
Wow, excellent, excellent. Well, doing the right thing, and even though we strive to do the right thing, sometimes things fall through.
Yes.
So when things fall apart and you have to rebound on a particular assignment that you're actually working on,
Right.
how do you become resilient within that?
I always kind of think back to a time that I faced something not really specific to what I'm going through at the time, but something that was similar. And I try to take those lessons to go ahead and walk myself back to the time that I made it out of that. The first thing that I do is I try to point the finger at myself to see what part I played in it in regards to my accountability. When it falls through, Jason, I give myself grace to, let myself know I can try to be all things, but there are times that it's the human factor, it's the flesh, that's what we deal with. And the last thing that I do in hopes of becoming resilient is to envision the outcome. What is it that I want it to look like, or what would success look like to me? And the last thing that I do is I always rally my resources and I ask for help whenever I need it, but I also always am continuously asking for feedback. How could I have done this better? I have a really tight knit group of folks that I rely on, and we continuously lift each other up. But the best teacher is knowing that I've gone through something before and I made it out of that, and it will happen again.
That's powerful,
Mhm.
powerful, powerful.
Yeah.
The best teacher, going through those particular circumstances.
Right.
And you mentioned something very powerful in
Mhm.
terms of giving yourself grace.
Right. Absolutely.
So just giving yourself grace and having that attitude in terms of you're going to proceed through that particular thing that you're going through,
Right.
following your intuition.
Hmm.
How do you trust your intuition enough to proceed with what you have to, that goal that you're trying to hit?
Absolutely, Jason. That's a great question. The first thing that I rely on is that I am over half of a century. So, with that has become a lot of wisdom. It's become a lot of trickiness, things that were a slippery slope that I managed to navigate. But I've always had the gift of intuition. Just trust your gut. What's your gut feeling? And sometimes, if you sense maybe I shouldn't do that, you should listen to yourself and not try to push through things. There's been times that I have been asked to do things, and I know that it wouldn't turn out right. I pushed through, and it was horrible. It was a horrible
Yes.
result. Other times, I kind of trusted my instinct, and I knew that I shouldn't have did that. And once it happened, and maybe it all imploded, I would say, you know what? I knew I shouldn't have done that. I
Wow.
knew that I shouldn't have. So it's just one of those things, but you always listen to yourself. And in a professional setting, you always have to read the room and kind of anticipate what it is that your people need, even before they ask you about it. And I go ahead and I always go back to my emotional intelligence. And one of those things within the grid, whenever I visualize it, it's a square. Each grid is worth 25%, but a quarter of that grid is self awareness.
Mm.
And the other part that I rely heavily on is self regulation. You have to learn to manage yourself as well as to anticipate the needs of folks that are with you, either professionally or personally.
Wow. Can you go in more to that in terms of managing yourself and, self-regulation, which you just
Right.
mentioned? Because
Right. And it's two things that I look at whenever I talk about self awareness. That's whenever I have to know what I don't like to use the word trigger because I think it's overused, but some things that really don't agree with me in my spirit. Some
yeah,
things that turn me off, maybe, folks that are late a lot of times. They're not prompt. And, your time is valuable. You can't get that back. So I have to think about if I know that I'm dealing with somebody who might be a habitual person that's tardy all the time, I have to always talk myself into it. Now, if they don't show up on time, how am I going to manage this so it won't be a negative impact? I have to regulate myself with that. And one of the tools that I like to use with self regulation is because we've all had bad moments. Jason, we've had bad days at work, and it might be first thing in the morning, it might be late in the afternoon, but I rely on the rule of sevens.
mm,
And what that is I do a little self talk and I said, you know what? 7 hours from now, this isn't even going to matter. I'm going to be at
yeah,
home. It might be 7 weeks, 7 months, but however far you need to take that out to where what's happening right now is so minor that you can always keep yourself above the fray with the glass being half full.
uh, uh, wow, wow, wow. I asked the right person
Yes,
to come on
good,
here.
good stuff.
I love that. I'm just taking up stuff to take with me as I
Oh,
go.
yeah.
That rule of seven.
Mhm.
That's powerful. That's powerful. The next principle is being determined. How
Mhm.
do you remain determined?
I think the first thing that you have to do is to ask yourself, is it worth it? To
Mm,
stay the course on something that you may have gotten knocked down on, something that you may have not been able to overcome. And I'll give you a perfect example. I relocated to Long Beach, California from Dallas, Texas in February of 2020.
mm,
The pandemic hit in March. And Jason and I had left a job that I had great tenure at. It was great income. And I just kept continuously applying for job after job after job. But during that time, there were very limited opportunities. We didn't know what was going to happen. So in October of 2020, I put in one last application. And I told my husband, I said, if I don't get this job, I'm just going to go ahead and just wait, until the year the holidays were coming. But after that happened, I was offered the job, very determined that I wasn't going to stop. And just whenever I made up in my mind, this is the last time, then the door opened. And that just gave me a great lesson because we can be this close to our breakthrough. But so many times we give up. But you have to stay the course and you have to know what you know in order to get through those things. But you're always that close to your breakthrough.
Absolutely. And once
Hmm.
you get that breakthrough, how
Yes.
do you show appreciation in that?
That's another great question. So I'll go ahead and continue with the story of getting the job in October. Coming from Dallas, Texas, being an experienced facilitator and experienced corporate trainer, you can imagine as far as my salary was. Well, Jason, whenever I came and I took that job, it was at an administrative level, maybe about 40% less than
Huh.
what I was making. But I knew that it was possibility and I knew that the company was good. So even in that, I had to humble myself and just appreciate where I was because I could see the vision. And the vision didn't stop where I was at with that job. I was looking further. And people need to really be mindful of that. Seeing and looking are two different things.
Huh.
Seeing is the here and now, but the looking is your vision into the future where you envision yourself being. So I'm very appreciative, and I always tell people, about my story whenever they may seem a little down or they're depressed or they're in between those hallways. And
Mm.
sometimes it can get rough between in that hallway before that next door opens and you're looking back at the one that's closed. But I always show appreciativeness verbally, and I always tell my story to keep encouraging other people.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm.
So, in terms of, and this is just you because you mentioned something in terms of vision.
Right.
So, having that the appreciation in terms of where you're at now and the whole what is your whole vision in terms of your outlook on life and how do you remain so positive?
Remaining positive through past experience that took you away from your core self. Things that will take you down, that will grind you up to dust. So I always make sure that I'm being adaptable. I'm always looking for new opportunities to broaden my horizon. And Jason, I just love people. I just love people. Just being around people, encouraging them, doing things like that. But my vision long term, as I'm sitting here right now, is to go ahead and continue with my group. I have a women's group called Inspirations. It's INSP capital HER. ATIONS, and that just provides women a safe place to talk about life's issues that
Mm,
we might not, get a chance to talk about. So I want to continue to grow that group. I want to continue to meet people, within work and also outside of work, but just to kind of align myself to what I think my purpose is here on
wow.
life, because a lot of us don't know what our purpose is.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm.
I can tell you're a people person.
Yeah, I am. I am.
Well, with that, the last principle is being youthful. How do
Mhm.
you remain youthful?
In years, Jason, I'm not, but in spirit, I am. And let me tell you how I remain youthful. Always being a learner. You don't
Uh,
have to always be the teacher. Even though I train so many people, I always walk away as a learner, being adaptable, being engaging. And the one thing to remaining youthful is to always show up enthusiastic and
mm,
always show up full of energy. It doesn't have anything to do with the number of years. It's about your spirit, but that's how I remain youthful in today's world.
absolutely, man. That's excellent. Well, the last and final question is: out of these principles, being fearless, resilient,
Mhm.
intuitive, determined, appreciative, and youthful, which one sticks out to you the most, and why?
Appreciativeness. And the reason that I say that is only in those hard times that you come out, that you have something to turn around and look back at when you come out of the valley. And I want you to know that we might go into that valley again, but I'll say it the same way that you came out before, you'll come out again. And I have been so blessed along this journey in my life, being surrounded by good people, good folks within my circle. And as the hard times came, it didn't seem so hard. So it's one of those things, but just looking back at where I've come from to where I'm at now.
Excellent, excellent.
Mhm.
Well, I would like to thank you for coming on and doing this.
Sure.
And I know this is going to help a lot of people. So thank you for doing this.
Yes, Jason, you're welcome. You're welcome.